Pelican Bay versus ADX. Florence. Where do America's most dangerous men go? Two prisons, two philosophies, both designed for one purpose: control over the most dangerous men America has ever known. From gang leaders who orchestrate murders from their cells, to terrorists plotting mass destruction, to inmates so violent they can never again walk among society. But here's the question. Which prison is truly America's ultimate cage? Pelican Bay or ADX Florence? Tonight, we pull back the layers of razor wire, concrete, and silence to reveal a battle most of us never see: the fight for dominance between America's most infamous prisons. Welcome to the showdown. Pelican Bay versus ADX Florence. Where do America's most dangerous men go? To understand the clash between Pelican Bay and ADX Florence, we have to start at the beginning. The late 20th century was chaos for America's prison system. Gangs exploded behind bars, violence soared, and prisons, already overcrowded, were crumbling under the weight of men too dangerous to control. In California, the threat had a name: the Security Housing Unit Crisis. State prisons were breeding grounds for gangs like the Aryan Brotherhood, Nuestra Familia, and the Mexican Mafia. These men didn't just fight in the yard, they orchestrated assassinations, extortions, and wars from their cells. Prison officials needed a new weapon. Their answer? Build a prison so remote, so controlled, that gangs couldn't spread their influence. That prison was Pelican Bay State Prison. Opened in 1989 on the northern edge of California, it was a fortress in the fog, a place where leaders of the prison underworld could be buried alive in silence. But while California fought gangs, the federal government faced a different kind of nightmare. The 1990s brought a surge of international terrorism and high-profile federal cases: Oklahoma City, the First World Trade, center bombing, cartels flooding cocaine across the border. The men behind these crimes weren't just criminals, they were symbols of defiance against the United States. And the Bureau of Prisons needed a solution. That solution became ADX Florence. Opened in 1994 in the desert of Colorado, ADX was called the Alcatraz of the Rockies. Its mission? To break the will of America's most notorious inmates, one day of isolation at a time. Two prisons, two enemies, two answers, one war, control over the men who refuse to be controlled. Step inside Pelican Bay or ADX Florence, and you enter worlds designed to erase identity. At Pelican Bay, the SHU is where men spend 22 to 23 hours a day in 8 by 10-foot cells. There are no group activities, no normal conversations, no human touch. Meals slide through a slot. Recreation means standing alone in a concrete pen, sometimes called a dog run. For years, some men at Pelican Bay claimed they didn't see the sun for decades. ADX. Florence takes it even further. Inside Florence, inmates live in total isolation. Their cells are soundproofed. Their windows face only the sky or walls, never another human being. Even recreation is done alone, in cages resembling giant kennels. The design is psychological. The silence isn't just an absence of noise, it's a weapon. Officials call it control, inmates call it torture, and somewhere between those two truths, America decides what justice looks like. In Pelican Bay, the enemy wears ink. Tattoos map the battlefield of America's deadliest gangs: the Aryan Brotherhood, the Mexican Mafia, Nuestra Familia, Black Guerrilla Family. For decades, these groups turned California's prison yards into war zones: stabbings, ambushes, riots, sometimes so violent that blood soaked the concrete in minutes. Pelican Bay became the state's answer, a place to bury the generals of these armies. Here, a man's world shrinks to a concrete box. But the walls don't always stop the orders. Investigators say that from inside Pelican Bay, gang leaders still orchestrated murders, extortion rackets, and drug trafficking, sometimes with nothing more than coded letters and visits through glass. One inmate famously described Pelican Bay not as a prison, but as a command center. The gang wars never ended. They just moved underground. But if Pelican Bay is the battlefield of gang generals, ADX Florence is the graveyard of terrorists, cartel lords, and high-profile enemies of the state. Inside Florence, you find names that once dominated headlines. The Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, who waged a one-man war against technology. Ramzi Youssef, mastermind of the first World Trade Center bombing. Richard Reed, the so-called shoe bomber. El Chapo, the Mexican drug lord whose empire stretched across continents. And then, the most feared of all, leaders of Al-Qaeda and other international terror networks, men whose actions reshaped global security forever. These men aren't in ADX because they might start a fight in the yard. They're in ADX because if they were anywhere else, entire nations could feel the consequences. In Pelican Bay, violence spreads laterally, from one cell block to another, from one yard to another, until the whole prison erupts. In ADX Florence, the danger moves outward, the possibility of communication, of influence, of plotting beyond the walls. This is the defining difference. Pelican Bay exists to keep a state from collapsing under gang violence. ADX Florence exists to keep the world safe from men who've declared war on it. One prison fights chaos with containment. The other fights ideology with isolation. Different wars, different enemies, but the same mission. Control men who cannot be controlled. Prisons are not just buildings. They are statements. Every slab of concrete, every slit of a window, every echo of a door slamming shut. It's all part of the design. At Pelican Bay and ADX Florence, the architecture itself is the first line of control. Pelican Bay was built with one purpose: silence the gangs. The prison is split between general population yards and its infamous security housing unit, the SHU. The SHU is a labyrinth of windowless cells, each a concrete tomb. The cells are arranged in X-shaped clusters, where guards can observe multiple wings without ever stepping into danger. From above, it looks efficient. From inside, it feels like a maze designed to erase hope. The design prevents communication. No windows to the outside, no face-to-face interactions. Even the recreation yards, small concrete pens, are stacked like boxes, each one enclosed, preventing inmates from even seeing who might be in the pen next to them. It's not just isolation, it's disconnection. A world where time, seasons, and even other human beings disappear. If Pelican Bay was a state's response to gang wars, ADX Florence was the federal government's masterpiece of control. Built in 1994, its design was called a clean version of hell. Cells here are 12 by 7 feet, concrete everything. The bed, the desk, even the stool are molded into the structure itself. Inmates are allowed one narrow window, but it's angled upward, showing nothing but sky. You cannot see the horizon. You cannot see the world. This is not an accident. It's design. A psychological scalpel. Doors are soundproof. Corridors are lined so that prisoners rarely, if ever, cross paths. Movement is orchestrated with military precision, one man at a time, shackled, escorted by multiple guards. Recreation, when allowed, takes place in a concrete pit, often referred to by inmates as the box. The sky above is caged by mesh wire. For some, it is the only glimpse of open air they will ever see again. These designs don't just confine bodies. They break rhythms. They erase identity. They force men to face themselves, and nothing else. Officials argue it's necessary, that without this architecture, chaos would spill outward, into other prisons, into cities, into the world. But critics argue it's something darker. They call it psychological torture. And in both Pelican Bay and ADX Florence, stories of broken minds echo louder than the slam of any steel door. In these prisons, time isn't just measured in days. It's measured in fragments of sanity. Two prisons, two philosophies, both cages for men society cannot risk setting free. But the question remains, which is truly America's ultimate prison? You decide. This is the Crime Files TV. Until next time, stay locked in.